Ryanair is the biggest low-cost airline in Europe and the biggest ultra-low-cost airline in the world. It's also the second in the world by the number of passengers flown and by the number of routes served. So as you have just heard, it's a true aviation giant. But when it comes to the fleet, there are just a few aircraft types that the airline operates. In September 2024, the airline group had 410 Boeing 737-800s, 170 Boeing 737s Max, 1 Boeing 737-700, and 27 Airbus A320s. But this is a separate story, and they are not operated under a Ryanair brand. There is no surprise that almost all of the 608 aircraft have been made by Boeing. There are also a few Airbus jets, but they are in Ryanair's fleet by accident, if we can call it like this, rather than by being a part of the wider strategy. And if we look at the orders, we see that the airline will add over 300 Boeing 737s Max and 0 Airbuses in the coming years. Now let's answer the question of why the Irish low-cost isn't ordering aircraft from the European manufacturer, and why this most probably won't also happen in the future. Firstly, Boeing aircraft are cheaper, and that matters for a low-cost airline. While officially Airbus A320neo at $110 million is cheaper than Boeing 737 MAX 8, which is listed for around $120 million, Ryanair was able to get huge discounts as a loyal Boeing customer, and thanks to ordering a large quantity of planes. In addition, according to industry experts, the real price that the airlines are paying for the 737 MAX is lower than the price of the Airbus A320neo. We can assume that this is true, as the famous Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary said that the day Airbus comes in 5% cheaper, Boeing will be gone, so the airline definitely gets the newest Boeings at the lowest price than Airbus would have cost. European manufacturers didn't want to sell the aircraft for a lower price, as it has a delivery backlog extending well into the 2030s. Another reason is pretty interesting, and it's not as obvious as you may think. And Michael O'Leary revealed it in one of the interviews. However, first, please hit the subscribe button below, as this obviously helps me a lot. Ryanair is the largest 737 operator in Europe. Besides that, there are not many airlines that have the Boeing narrowbody in their fleet, and many airlines are replacing their Boeing fleets with Airbuses. For example, KLM plans to retire their 737 soon in favor of the Airbus A320neo family. All of this leads to a situation when Ryanair pilots can't quickly move to the competing airlines, as this would require a separate type rating that would take 6 months. So Ryanair is not losing many pilots to other airlines and doesn't have to worry about them as much as competitors that is using Airbuses do. Boeing pilots are simply forced to fly for Ryanair. Adding an A320neos to the fleet would have also added to the airline's operating costs. Ryanair would then need a separate maintenance crew, spare parts, and different training for cabin crew and pilots. That's definitely not what a budget airline wants. The process of replacing the Boeing aircraft with Airbus ones would have been very costly after all. Now let's see why Ryanair Group has Airbus A320s in its fleet. When we take a closer look, we see that all of them belong to the airline Lauda, or Lauda Europe to be precise. That's the Ryanair subsidiary that was acquired back in 2018. The airline itself had been founded by Niki Lauda, a famous Austrian racing driver and then aviation entrepreneur, as a successor of the bankrupt Niki. Shortly after Ryanair bought 24.9% of its shares, this amount later grew to 75% and finally to 100% in January 2019. As Niki Airlines operated only Airbus aircraft, Lauda inherited them all. After acquiring the majority of the Lauda's shares, Ryanair decided to keep the Airbus fleet, as the airline already had both ground and flying personnel trained for this manufacturer, and retraining them would have been too costly. The Lauda fleet size later grew steadily over the past years. Now the airline has 27 Airbus A320ceo aircraft that are on average 17.3 years old, so they will need replacement after a few years. Until then, more Airbuses are expected to join Lauda, which has been revealed by the Ryanair CEO that the number may even grow to 50. New A320s are for now out of consideration, as the earliest possible delivery would take place after 2030, and Ryanair doesn't want to wait for so long. As you've heard at the beginning of the video, Ryanair has over 300 737s MAX on order. The airline doesn't care about the aircraft's past, which included not only the 2 crashes and grounding, but also more recently quality control issues. The reason for that is simple. Passengers also don't care about the aircraft they are flying. This was even said multiple times by Michael O'Leary. When it comes to Ryanair, price is the most important factor for passengers and not the aircraft they are flying. So people aren't interested whether they are flying with Boeing or Airbus. They just want to get to the destination as quickly as possible at the lowest cost. And even though the Ryanair CEO said that the airline had discovered silly small things during inspections of recent aircraft deliveries, he said they would lift floorboards and find a rag or a spanner under them. It's indicative of a poor approach to quality control on the line in Wichita or Seattle, and Boeing needs to fix it. Despite this, Ryanair's confidence in Boeing remains unshaken. This attitude reflects Ryanair's commitment to maintaining its ultra-low-cost operations, where price, not brand loyalty or reputation, drives decisions. When it comes to aircraft delivery delays, Airbus and Boeing are equally affected. Ryanair was forced to cut schedules across Europe as the new 737s are not going to be delivered as quickly as the Irish airlines anticipated. This may also result in price hikes, as flight supply will be lower. However, Ryanair is in a much better situation than one of its main competitors, Wizz Air, which was forced to ground numerous Airbus's A321neo due to Pratt & Whitney engine issues and cancel multiple routes as a result. Now, as we have a detailed overview of the situation, let's quickly sum up the reasons for Ryanair not choosing Airbus. Most importantly, Boeing aircraft are cheaper than Airbus ones for Ryanair, as the airline was able to negotiate huge discounts. Ordering A320neo would have resulted in increased costs, and that's not what Ryanair wants. Being one of the few airlines that operate 737 in Europe also helps Ryanair, as pilots can't easily switch to the competition, which flies on Airbus aircraft. Ryanair doesn't have to care as much about its pilots as Airbus flying competition does. Also, the fact that Ryanair remained loyal to Boeing for years plays a role, as switching 600 aircraft fleet to Boeing would have been an extremely costly and long process, especially as the earliest possible opportunity to get A320neos is several years away. Irish low cost is not afraid of Boeing's problems, as passengers aren't interested in this. They only care about the price instead. And few Airbuses in the Lauda fleet don't represent a change in the airline strategy and are rather another cost-cutting measure, as getting additional 737s and retraining the crew would have been more expensive. So as always, everything in the airline industry is about cutting costs. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel.